Ethan Voss stood in the doorway of his penthouse bedroom, his phone slipping from his hand and hitting the marble floor with a crack. The maid he'd hired 3 weeks ago lay unconscious across his bed, her uniform twisted around her small frame, one arm dangling off the edge. Her breathing came shallow and rapid, her lips tinged blue. Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we dive into this shocking story, I want to say hello. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments. How are you doing? Quick question, have you subscribed yet? If not, please hit that subscribe button right now because you don't want to miss what happens next. Trust me, this story will leave you speechless. Ethan's first instinct was fury. What the hell was she doing in his private quarters? The East Wing was off limits. His staff knew better. His jaw clenched as he crossed the room, his mind already calculating which security heads would lose their jobs by noon. This was a violation, a setup, maybe blackmail. But then he got close enough to see her face. Isla McLean, 23, according to her file, looked even younger with dark hair matted against her damp forehead, skin pale as moonlight. She wasn't faking this. The tremor in her limbs, her fingers curled into tight fists. This was real distress. Ethan reached for her wrist to check her pulse, and that's when his entire world stopped. His fingers brushed her left hand, and he saw it. The scar. A distinctive mark running from the base of her thumb across her palm in a jagged curve. The tissue raised and puckered. Old, but unmistakable. The pattern was exact. Too exact. His breath caught. The room tilted. He grabbed her hand fully, turning it toward the morning light, his own hands shaking. The scar was identical, not similar, identical, to the one he'd memorized 20 years ago, the one that haunted his nightmares. The one belonging to someone who couldn't possibly be here, couldn't possibly be alive. His sister had died in the fire. Everyone said so. 5-year-old Lily Voss, lost in flames that consumed the western estate. Her body never recovered. He'd been 15, spending years in therapy, learning to accept that some tragedies leave no closure. But he'd seen that scar on Lily's hand 1,000 times. She'd gotten it at 3, grabbing a broken picture frame, slicing her palm so badly it took 18 stitches. He'd held her in the car to the hospital, her blood soaking his shirt while she screamed, and he promised ice cream and puppies and anything to make her stop crying. Ethan's vision blurred. His heart hammered against his ribs. This scar, Isla's scar, had the same slight hook at the end where Lily's had caught the frame's corner. Same width, same placement. Medical impossibility made it a 1 in a billion chance for identical scarring. His legs went weak. He sank onto the bed beside Isla, still gripping her hand. If this was Lily, if somehow his sister hadn't died, why was she working as his maid? Why didn't she recognize him? And if this wasn't Lily, who was this woman, and why did she have his dead sister's scar? He needed answers. Now. Only one person could give them. The woman who'd been there that night, who'd identified the remains, who'd planned the funeral for a closed casket. Ethan's hand trembled as he grabbed his backup phone from the nightstand. He pulled up his contacts, finger hovering over the name he called maybe twice a year. Mom. Eleanor Harmon Voss. The Ice Queen who'd rebuilt the Voss empire from tragedy's ashes, who never spoke about that night, who shut down every conversation about Lily with cold finality. He pressed call, once, twice. His eyes never left Isla's face, searching for resemblances he should have seen before. The shape of her nose, the arch of her brows. How had he not noticed? The line clicked. His mother's crisp voice cut through. Ethan, it's 6 in the morning. I need you to tell me the truth. His voice came out raw, stripped of control. Right now, no lies, no deflection. A pause, then quieter, with something like fear. About what? About the fire. About Lily. About what really happened 20 years ago. He looked at Isla's scarred hand, because I'm standing in my bedroom looking at a woman who has Lily's scar, and you're going to tell me why. Or I swear, Mother, I will burn down everything you've built to find out myself. The silence stretched so long he thought she'd hung up. Then he heard it. A sound he'd never heard from Eleanor Voss. A sob, broken and terrified. Oh, God, his mother whispered. She found you. Ethan, listen very carefully. What devastating secret has Ethan's mother been hiding for 20 years? Drop your theories in the comments. She found you. Ethan's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, his free hand gripping the edge of his bed frame until his knuckles turned white. What the hell does that mean, Mother? Who found me? Is this... He couldn't even say it. Couldn't let the hope form into words because hope was the cruelest thing he'd ever known. The thing that had destroyed him for 3 years after the fire, until he'd finally learned to kill it, to bury it so deep that nothing could resurrect it. Except here it was, clawing its way up his throat, choking him. Is this Lily? The question came out broken, and he hated himself for the vulnerability in his voice. Hated that, after 20 years of building walls high enough to keep out every emotion that could hurt him, this unconscious woman with a scar had demolished them in seconds. His mother's breathing came ragged through the phone. Don't say her name. Not yet. Is the girl conscious? No. She collapsed. I need to call an ambulance. But first you're going to tell me. No ambulances! Eleanor's voice cracked with panic. No hospitals. Not until I get there. Ethan, please. There are things you don't understand. Things I did to protect you. Protect me? He laughed, bitter and sharp. You let me believe my sister was dead for 20 years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every goddamn therapy session where they told me to let go of the guilt. His voice broke. The guilt, that was the thing that lived in his chest like a second heart. The thing that had shaped every decision he'd made since he was 15 years old. The reason he'd built Voss Industries into an empire worth $30 billion. The reason he worked 18-hour days. The reason he'd never let anyone close enough to matter. Because he'd failed the one person who'd needed him most. He'd been at a party the night of the fire. Some stupid high school thing he'd snuck out to attend. If he'd been home, if he'd been watching Lily like he was supposed to, maybe he could have saved her. Maybe she wouldn't have been in the West Wing when it went up. Maybe he could have carried her out. Instead, he'd been doing shots with friends while his baby sister burned. Except maybe she hadn't burned. Maybe she'd been alive this whole time, and his mother had known. I'm coming there now, Eleanor said. Don't touch her. Don't move her. And Ethan, don't tell anyone about this. Not yet. The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone, his mind reeling, then looked back at Isla. In the 3 weeks since he'd hired her, he'd barely noticed her beyond a vague awareness of efficiency. She cleaned his penthouse every Tuesday and Friday, always arriving early, always gone before he returned from his morning meetings. He'd approved her hiring because his head of household, Mrs. Chen, had vouched for her. The girl needs work, Chen had said in her no-nonsense way. Good worker, quiet, doesn't ask questions. Now he realized how little he actually knew. Why had she taken a job cleaning houses when, if this was Lily, she should have been an heiress? Where had she been for 20 years? Why hadn't she told him who she was? His hands moved on instinct, checking her pulse again, thready but steady, then gently straightening her position on the bed so she could breathe easier. Up close, he could see details he'd missed before. A small birthmark near her left ear. Lily had one there too. The shape of her jaw, delicate but stubborn. Their father's jaw. God, how had he not seen it? Mr. Voss? The voice at his bedroom door made him whip around. David Chen, Chen's son and Ethan's personal assistant, stood in the doorway, his usually composed expression shifting to shock. Sir, I heard a crash. Is that Isla? What happened? David was 26, Harvard educated, loyal to a fault, and one of maybe 3 people on Earth Ethan actually trusted. They'd known each other since prep school, back before Ethan had money and reputation to hide behind. Back when he was just a traumatized kid trying to survive his father's expectations and his mother's cold distance. Close the door, Ethan said quietly, and call Dr. Rivera. Tell him I need him here immediately. But this is off the books. Completely confidential. David's eyes widened, but he nodded and pulled out his phone, already moving. That was what Ethan valued about him. No unnecessary questions, just action. While David made the call in hushed tones, Ethan found himself studying Isla's face with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Her dark hair was longer than Lily's had been, but Lily had been 5 when she disappeared. 25 years old now, if she'd lived. The math lined up. The age was right. Dr. Rivera will be here in 15 minutes, David said, pocketing his phone. Sir, should I contact no one else? And David? Ethan met his assistant's eyes. What do you know about her? About Isla McLean. Everything. David's brow furrowed. Not much. She applied through the standard channels 6 months ago. Your mother actually recommended her specifically from a list of candidates. I thought it was odd at the time since Mrs. Voss rarely involves herself in household staffing, but the words hit Ethan like a physical blow. His mother had recommended Isla. His mother had placed her here, in his home, within arm's reach. This wasn't coincidence. This was orchestrated. What else? Ethan demanded. She lives alone in a studio apartment in Brooklyn. No family listed on her emergency contacts, just a shelter in Queens, St. Catherine's Women's Refuge. My mother mentioned Isla was saving money for night classes. Business degree, I think. David paused. She's a good person, sir. Quiet, but kind. Last month she gave her entire paycheck to another maid whose daughter needed surgery. Something twisted in Ethan's chest. His sister, if this was his sister, had been living in poverty, working multiple jobs, donating money she desperately needed, while he sat on billions. While their mother knew exactly where she was and said nothing. Sir, what's going on? David asked carefully. Why does this feel like more than a medical emergency? Ethan looked at his oldest friend, the person who'd sat with him through panic attacks in college when the anniversary of the fire came around, who knew exactly how deep the lily-shaped wound in his soul went. Because, he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, I think the sister I've spent 20 years mourning just collapsed in my bed, and I have no idea why she's been hiding from me. David's face went pale. That's impossible. Lily died in the... Look at her left hand. Ethan lifted Isla's wrist, displaying the scar. You've seen the photos from when we were kids. You tell me if I'm losing my mind. David stepped closer, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The color drained completely from his face. Oh my God. Ethan. That's... identical. I know. A soft moan escaped Isla's lips, and both men froze. Her eyelids fluttered, dark lashes casting shadows on her 2 pale cheeks. For a moment, Ethan thought she might wake up, might open her eyes and give him answers. Instead, she whispered something so quiet he almost missed it. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to see where he sleeps." Then her body went limp again, sinking deeper into unconsciousness. Ethan's heart shattered and reformed in the space of those whispered words. She'd come to his room not to steal or betray, but out of curiosity, maybe even longing. The longing of a sister who'd been separated from her brother for reasons he still didn't understand. "The doctor needs to get here now," Ethan said, his voice steel over the chaos of emotions churning inside him. "And then my mother and I are going to have a conversation that's 20 years overdue." What do you think Isla was really doing in Ethan's room? And what secret is Eleanor hiding? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Dr. Marcus Rivera arrived 12 minutes later, his silver hair disheveled and his medical bag clutched in one hand. But whatever questions he had died on his lips when he saw Ethan's face. "Examine her," Ethan said, stepping back from the bed, but keeping his eyes locked on Isla's unconscious form. "Tell me everything." Rivera worked in practiced silence, checking her vitals, her pupils, listening to her heart and lungs with his stethoscope. 2 minutes stretched into 5, and Ethan's patience frayed with each passing second. Finally, Rivera straightened, his expression troubled. "She's severely malnourished and dehydrated. Her blood pressure is dangerously low. When did she last eat?" "How the hell should I know?" Ethan snapped, then caught himself. "She works for me. She's not. We don't." The words felt like ash in his mouth. She worked for him, and he hadn't noticed she was starving herself. What kind of monster did that make him? "She needs fluids immediately," Rivera said, pulling AV supplies from his bag. "But Mr. Voss, there's something else. Her collapse wasn't just from malnutrition. She has elevated stress hormones consistent with extreme psychological trauma. And these marks on her wrists." He gently turned Isla's right arm, revealing faint circular scars Ethan hadn't noticed before. "These are old restraint marks. This woman has been held captive at some point, likely for an extended period." The room spun. Ethan gripped the bedpost. "How long ago?" "Years, judging by the scarring, but the psychological impact is still active. She's experiencing what I'd classify as a severe panic response, even in unconsciousness. Her body is literally shutting down from fear." Rivera's eyes met Ethan's with concern. "Who is she to you?" Before Ethan could answer, Isla's eyes flew open. Not the slow flutter of someone waking naturally, but the violent snap of someone jolting from a nightmare. Her dark eyes were wild, unfocused, and when they landed on Ethan standing over her, she screamed. It was a sound of pure terror, raw and primal, and it cut through Ethan like a blade. She scrambled backward on the bed, tangling in the sheets. Her scarred hand raised defensively. "No, please. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come in here. Please don't." Her voice broke into sobs. "I just wanted to feel close to someone who... Please don't hurt me." "Isla, stop." Ethan raised his hands, forcing himself to step back, even though every instinct screamed to move closer, to comfort her. "No one's going to hurt you. You're safe." But she wasn't hearing him. Her eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal seeking escape, her breathing coming in gasps that would lead to hyperventilation in seconds. It was David who moved, stepping into her line of sight with his hands raised, his voice gentle. "Isla, it's David, from the house. You know me, remember? You're okay. You're in Mr. Voss's penthouse. You collapsed, But you're safe now. Recognition flickered in her eyes. She focused on David. And slowly, so slowly, her breathing began to even out. David. Her voice was small, broken. I'm here. Dr. Rivera is here too. He's going to help you, okay? She looked at the doctor, then finally at Ethan. Really looked at him. And something happened that Ethan wasn't prepared for. The fear in her eyes shifted, transforming into something else entirely. Wonder, longing, and underneath it all, a soul-deep sadness that made his chest ache. Mr. Voss, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't have been in your room. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I found a photo in the library yesterday when I was cleaning. An old family photo from 20 years ago. You were standing with your parents and a little girl, and you looked so happy, and Her voice cracked. I wanted to know what it felt like to be in a place where someone like you lives. Someone who had a family. I never had that. I've never had anyone. Ethan's throat closed. The vulnerability in her eyes. The desperate loneliness. He saw himself reflected there. The same emptiness he'd carried for 2 decades. And something else stirred. Something he had no right to feel while she was this fragile, this broken. She was beautiful in her brokenness, and he wanted to fix her, protect her, keep her safe in a way that had nothing to do with whether she was Lily, and everything to do with who she was in this moment. The little girl in the photo, he said carefully, moving closer but maintaining distance. Do you remember what she looked like? Isla's brow furrowed. She had dark hair, like mine. She was holding someone's hand. Yours, I think. And her gaze dropped to her own left hand, to the scar. She had the same scar I do. I noticed it in the photo. That's why I couldn't stop staring. I thought maybe, she laughed bitterly. I thought maybe it was a sign that I belonged somewhere, even if just in a stupid coincidence. The penthouse door burst open with enough force to slam against the wall. Eleanor Voss stood in the entrance, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled, her face pale. But it was the woman behind her that made Ethan's blood freeze. She was in her mid-40s, thin and worn, with dark hair streaked with premature gray. And when Isla saw her, she went absolutely rigid. Mom. Isla's voice was barely audible. The woman stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. Baby, I told you to stay away from here. I told you never to take this job. You know each other. Ethan's voice came out sharp, demanding. Eleanor moved into the room, her movements stiff. Ethan, this is Claire Dawson. And before you say anything else, you need to understand, she's the woman who saved your life the night of the fire. The woman your father was having an affair with. And Isla. She looked at the young woman on the bed with something that might have been regret. Isla is Claire's daughter, your father's daughter, your half-sister. The words detonated in the silence like a bomb. Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His half-sister, not Lily, a different sister entirely, one his father had created through betrayal, one who'd been hidden away for. She has Lily's scar, he said, his voice hollow. How does she have Lily's scar? Claire Dawson's face crumpled. Because the night of the fire, when I went back to save you, Lily was already gone. The smoke had taken her, but she was holding a piece of broken glass in her hand from a picture frame. She'd been trying to cut herself free from where debris had trapped her. Tears streamed down Claire's face. I couldn't save her. God help me. I tried, but I couldn't. So her voice broke. I took the glass, and I gave my daughter the same scar. So that some part of Lily would survive. So that someone would remember her the right way. Ethan felt his legs give out. He sank into the chair behind him, his world imploding. You let me believe, all these years. I let you believe Lily died quickly in the fire, Eleanor said, her voice cold despite the tears on her cheeks. Because the truth, that she suffered, that she was trapped and terrified, would have destroyed you. And I let Claire and Isla disappear, because acknowledging your father's betrayal would have destroyed our family's reputation. So you paid them off, Ethan said flatly. You erased them. I gave them money to start over, Eleanor corrected. $2 million, enough for a good life. She lives in a shelter, David interjected quietly. That money's long gone. Isla's voice cut through, stronger now despite the tears. My mother gave every cent to St. Catherine's Refuge, the place that took us in when we had nothing. She said blood money couldn't build our lives, so we built them ourselves. She looked at Ethan, and in her eyes he saw strength he hadn't expected. I took this job because I wanted to see who you were, the brother I never got to know. I didn't expect... Her voice softened. I didn't expect you to be just as lonely as me. Something shifted in Ethan's chest, a decision forming. Everyone out, he said quietly. Everyone except Isla. Now. When they hesitated, his voice turned to steel. Now. What choice is Ethan about to make? Drop your predictions below, and don't forget to subscribe to catch the next part. The door clicked shut behind Eleanor and Claire, leaving Ethan alone with Isla for the first time since the world had tilted on its axis. She sat on his bed still, the IV drip Rivera had insisted on before leaving attached to her arm, her dark eyes watching him with a wariness that made him feel like a monster. You don't have to stay, she said quietly. I know this is. I can't imagine what you're feeling right now. Can't you? Ethan moved to the window, needing distance before he did something stupid like reach for her. You just found out the man you work for is your half-brother. That your mother carved a dead girl's scar into your hand as some twisted memorial. I think you're feeling exactly what I'm feeling. Isla flinched. She did it because she loved Lily, because she couldn't save her and it destroyed her. She mutilated you. The words came out harsh. You were what, 3 years old? 4? 5? Isla's voice was steady despite the tears, the same age Lily was when she died, and I begged her to do it. That stopped him cold. He turned. What? I heard her crying one night, talking about the little girl she couldn't save, about how Lily had been holding that glass, trying to cut through the debris, pinning her down. How brave she'd been, even though she was terrified. Isla looked at her scarred palm. I wanted to be that brave. I wanted my mom to be proud of me, the way she talked about Lily, so I asked her to give me the same mark. To make me strong like her. Something in Ethan's chest cracked wide open. This woman, his sister, apparently, had spent her entire life trying to live up to the memory of a dead girl. Just like he had. Isla, you don't have to be Lily. You don't have to be anyone but yourself. That's easy for you to say. She met his eyes, and the fire there surprised him. You got to keep your name, your family, your legacy. I got a mother who gave away a fortune, and a father who never acknowledged I existed. Do you know how many times I imagined what it would be like to meet you? To have you look at me like I mattered? The raw honesty in her voice pulled him across the room before he could stop himself. He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough to touch, but holding back. You matter. Sister or not, employee or not, what happened to you matters. Does it? Her laugh was bitter. Because from where I'm sitting, your mother paid mine to disappear, and we both just went along with it. I'm the dirty secret, Ethan. The proof of your father's infidelity. The thing that ruins the perfect Voss legacy. My father ruined that legacy himself. Ethan's voice was hard. And he's dead, so he doesn't get a say anymore. But I do. And I'm saying you're not going anywhere until we figure this out. Figure what out? They told us who I am. Did they? Ethan pulled out his phone, because something's not adding up. My mother said she gave your mother $2 million 20 years ago. Your mother says she donated it all. But St. Catherine's Refuge, I just had David pull their records, received a single donation of $50,000 from an anonymous donor 15 years ago. Not 2 million, not even close. Isla's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying someone's lying. Either your mother didn't donate the money, or my mother didn't give her as much as she claimed, or... He stopped, a darker thought occurring. Or someone else got to that money first. Who? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Ethan's mind was already racing, connecting dots. The fire happened at our western estate. That property was sold 6 months later to pay off debts, or so I was told. But if my father was supporting your mother and you, he would have needed money. Secret money. The kind that doesn't show up in estate records. You think he stole from his own family? I think my father was a lot of things, most of them terrible. Ethan hesitated, then made a decision. Isla, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you ever had a DNA test? She shook her head. My mother always said I was his daughter. I never had reason to question it. But you never met him? Never had proof? No. Her voice was small. I just trusted what I was told. Ethan stood, pacing now. What if that's the lie? What if you're not his daughter at all? What if my mother paid yours off for a different reason entirely? That doesn't make sense. Why would she pay off a random woman? Because that random woman saved my life. Ethan stopped, turning to her. What if the affair story was a cover? What if my father didn't want anyone knowing the real reason Claire was at the estate that night? Isla's face went pale. What reason? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He pulled up his contacts, calling someone he'd hoped never to speak to again. Who are you calling? Vincent Shepard. He was the lead investigator on the fire. He's retired now, but if anyone knows what really happened that night, it's him. The phone rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Voss, didn't expect to hear from you again. I need the full case file on the Western Estate fire. Everything, including whatever you held back. A long pause. What makes you think I held anything back? Because you visited me in the hospital 3 times after the fire. And each time you asked me the same question. Did your father have enemies? I was 15 and traumatized. I didn't understand what you were asking. I do now. Another pause, longer this time. Meet me tomorrow, alone. And Voss, be prepared. What you're about to learn, it doesn't paint your family in a kind light. The line went dead. Ethan looked at Isla, saw the fear and confusion in her eyes, and felt something shift between them. Something that went beyond family obligation, beyond guilt or duty. He wanted to protect her, needed to. Not because she might be his sister, but because she'd survived something terrible and come out stronger. Because she'd walked into the lion's den, knowing who he was just to feel connected to someone. Because when she looked at him, he felt less alone than he had in 20 years. Tomorrow we get answers, he said. But tonight, you're staying here. Guest room. David will bring whatever you need. Ethan, I can't just... Yes, you can. His voice softened. Please, let me do this one thing. Let me keep you safe. She searched his face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but just for tonight. As she stood, the IV pulling slightly, she swayed. Ethan caught her automatically, his hands on her waist, and suddenly they were inches apart. He could smell the jasmine of her shampoo, could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, could feel the warmth of her breath. For one suspended moment, neither of them moved. Then Isla stepped back, her cheeks flushed. I should. The guest room. Right. Yes! Ethan released her, his heart hammering. Down the hall. Second door. She walked away, and he stood there feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff. This was wrong. She was his sister. Probably. Maybe. He didn't know anymore, and that uncertainty was dangerous because it left room for feelings he had no right to have. His phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. We need to talk. What you're doing is reckless. Leave the past buried. He deleted it. Another text, this time from an unknown number. Stop digging into the fire. Some truths are meant to stay hidden. This is your only warning. Ethan's blood went cold. Someone was watching. Someone who didn't want him finding answers. Which meant he was on the right track. And it meant Isla was in more danger than either of them had realized. Is Isla really Ethan's sister? Or is there an even bigger secret hiding in the past? Comment your theories. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. This story is about to get even more intense. Vincent Shepard's apartment smelled like old coffee and cigarette smoke, despite the no smoking sign in the lobby. The former investigator sat across from Ethan in a worn leather chair, a manila folder thick with documents resting on his lap. Ethan had brought Isla despite Shepard's instruction to come alone, and the old man's eyes had lingered on her face when they arrived, with an expression that looked disturbingly like recognition. Before I show you this, Shepard said, his voice gravelly from years of smoking, I need you to understand something. I was ordered to close this case, told to rule it an electrical fire and move on. But electrical fires don't have 3 separate points of origin. They don't have accelerant patterns. And they don't happen on the same night a very expensive piece of art goes missing from the estate vault. Ethan leaned forward. You're saying it was arson. I'm saying it was murder, disguised as accident. Someone wanted that estate to burn, and they didn't care who was inside when it did. Shepard opened the folder, pulling out a photograph that made Ethan's stomach drop. It showed the estate's west wing, gutted by fire, but in the corner, barely visible, was a figure, small, child-sized. We found her in the servants' stairwell, Shepard continued, alive, unconscious from smoke inhalation, but alive. 5 years old, dark hair, and a fresh cut on her left hand from broken glass. The room started spinning. Isla grabbed Ethan's arm, her fingers digging in. That's not possible, Ethan said, but his voice had no strength behind it. My mother identified Lily's body. There was a funeral. There was a closed casket. Funeral for remains too badly burned to identify. Convenient, that. Shepard pulled out another document. I ran DNA from the child we found. Took samples from your father's personal effects for comparison. She was his daughter, no question, but when I went to report this to your mother, I was met by her attorney. By morning, the little girl was gone from the hospital. My evidence had disappeared. Then I had new orders from the commissioner, a friend of your mother's, to close the case or lose my pension. Isla's hand trembled against Ethan's arm. Where did the girl go? The one you found? Shepard looked at her with those knowing eyes. That's the question, isn't it? Hospital records show she was released to a Claire Dawson, listed as maternal aunt. But here's the interesting part. Claire Dawson didn't exist before the fire. No birth certificate, no social security number, no records at all until she appeared with a brand new identity and a sudden daughter 6 months after the blaze. The words hung in the air like smoke. Isla stood abruptly, backing toward the door. No, my mother. She wouldn't. I remember my childhood. I remember being 5, being 6. I remember. But her voice faltered because what did she remember? What memories were real and which had been planted by a woman desperate to save a child? Sit down, Lily, Shepard said gently. The name hit her like a physical blow. She shook her head violently. I'm not Lily. I'm Isla. Isla McLean. My mother is Claire Dawson, and my father was. She stopped, her face crumbling. I don't even know who my father was because she never told me his name. She just said he was a man who couldn't be in our lives. Ethan stood, moving to her, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching. Isla, look at me. When she did, he saw his own devastation reflected in her eyes. If this is true, if you're Lily, then my mother didn't just hide my sister. She kidnapped you, erased you, gave you to a stranger, and let me believe you were dead for 20 years. But why? Isla's voice broke. Why would she do that? Because, Shepard interjected, pulling out one final photograph of this. The image showed 2 people in the estate garden the day before the fire. Eleanor Voss and a man who wasn't Ethan's father. They were close, intimate. And in the background, barely visible through a window, was a small dark-haired girl watching them. Lily. Young Lily, who'd seen something she shouldn't have. Your mother was having the affair, Ethan said slowly, the pieces falling into horrible place. She blamed my father to cover her own tracks, and Lily saw her, knew her secret. The fire was meant to destroy evidence, Shepard confirmed. The art that went missing. It contained a hidden safe with documents your father had gathered. Proof of Eleanor's affair, proof she was embezzling from Voss Industries to fund her lover's debts. He was going to divorce her, take the company, and she'd have lost everything, so she made sure he lost everything first. But Lily survived, Ethan said. Survived and could testify to what she'd seen, so my mother made her disappear. The rage that swept through him was incandescent. 20 years. 20 years of guilt and grief while his mother had orchestrated everything. While she'd looked him in the eye at every therapy session, every breakdown, every anniversary, and lied. Isla's legs gave out. Ethan caught her, pulling her against his chest, and she collapsed into him, her whole body shaking with sobs. I'm not real, she gasped against his shirt. Everything I remember, everything I am, it's all a lie. Claire isn't my mother. I don't even know my own name. You're real, Ethan said fiercely, his arms tightening around her. You're the most real thing I've felt in 20 years. And your name is whatever you want it to be. Isla. Lily. I don't care. You're my sister, and I'm not losing you again. She pulled back enough to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. And something passed between them that had nothing to do with sibling affection. It was raw and desperate and dangerous. The connection between 2 people who'd had everything stripped away and found each other in the wreckage. Ethan, she whispered. If I'm Lily, if I'm really her, you can't look at me like that. Like what? But he knew. He could feel it in the way his heart hammered when she was near, the way his hands didn't want to let her go, the way every protective instinct he possessed had rewired itself around keeping her safe. Like I'm not your sister. His phone rang, shattering the moment. David's name flashed on the screen. Ethan answered, not stepping away from Isla. This better be important. Sir, your mother just transferred $15 million from the company's emergency fund to an offshore account. And she's booked a private flight to Switzerland, leaving in 3 hours. David's voice was tight with urgency. There's more. I found records of monthly payments she's been making for 20 years to a facility called Whitmore Psychiatric Hospital. The patient name is sealed, but the admission date matches the fire. Ethan's blood went cold. She's been paying to keep someone locked up. There's a name listed as occasional visitor on the records. David continued. Claire Dawson. Sir, I think Claire's been working with your mother this whole time. I think Isla's been a pawn in whatever game they've been playing. Isla jerked away from Ethan like she'd been burned. No, my mother loves me. She wouldn't. But the doubt in her voice said otherwise. All those years of poverty while Eleanor paid for expensive psychiatric care for someone. All those years Claire had kept Isla away from the Voss family, until suddenly she'd pushed her to take this job. It had all been calculated. We need to get to that hospital, Ethan said. Now, before my mother destroys whatever evidence is there. Shepard stood, grabbing his coat. I'm coming with you. I've waited 20 years to close this case properly. As they rushed to the door, Isla grabbed Ethan's hand, forcing him to stop. If we find out I'm Lily, if this is all true, what happens to us? To whatever this is between us. Ethan looked at their joined hands, at the scar on her palm that had started all of this, and made a choice. Then we deal with it. Together. But first, we find out who you really are. And we make my mother answer for every lie she's ever told. The determination in Isla's eyes when she nodded nearly broke him. She was so strong, so brave, even when her entire world was crumbling, just like Lily had been, trying to cut herself free from the debris. Maybe she'd always been his sister, or maybe the truth was even more complicated. Either way, he wasn't letting her face this alone. Who do you think is locked up in Whitmore Psychiatric Hospital? Drop your wildest theories in the comments below. Whitmore Psychiatric Hospital loomed against the evening sky like a gothic nightmare. All iron gates and barred windows. The kind of place where people disappeared and were forgotten. Ethan's driver barely stopped the car before he was out. Isla and Shepard right behind him. The front desk nurse looked up with practiced indifference until Ethan slid a stack of $100 bills across the counter. Patient records for account number 47829. The one Eleanor Voss has been funding for 20 years. I want the name, the room number, and access. Now. The nurse's eyes widened at the cash, then narrowed. Sir, I can't just. $5,000 says you can't. Ethan added more bills. 10 says you do it in the next 60 seconds. Money talked. It always did. 2 minutes later, they stood outside room 247, a heavy metal door with a small reinforced window. The nameplate read, Jane Doe 12. But the nurse had whispered the truth before scurrying away. Everyone here calls her the Voss ghost. Shepard peered through the window first, then went absolutely white. Jesus Christ! Ethan looked. The woman inside sat in a wheelchair facing the barred window, her back to them, long dark hair shot through with gray hanging down to her waist. She was thin, frail, and when she turned slightly, he saw her profile. His mother's profile. His mother's nose, his mother's cheekbones, but younger, much younger. That's not possible, Ethan breathed. My mother doesn't have a sister. She was an only child. According to what records? Shepard's voice was grim. The ones she controlled. The door opened from the inside. Eleanor Voss stood there, her face a mask of cold fury. I knew you wouldn't listen. I knew you'd come here and ruin everything I've spent 2 decades protecting. Behind her, the woman in the wheelchair turned fully, and Ethan saw her face. She was perhaps 45, with eyes that had once been sharp, but were now dulled by medication. And she was looking at Isla with an expression of such desperate longing, it was physically painful to witness. "My baby," the woman whispered. "They told me you were dead. They said the fire took you." Isla stumbled backward into Ethan. "Who is she? Tell her," Shepard demanded of Eleanor. "Tell her the truth, or I will." Eleanor's composure cracked. "She's Catherine Harmon, my younger sister, and Isla's real mother." The words detonated like a bomb. Isla made a sound between a gasp and a sob. "No, Claire is my mother. Claire raised me. Claire was my assistant," Eleanor said coldly. "I paid her to take my sister's daughter and raise her far away from this family. Because Catherine..." She looked at her sister with something that might have been pity or might have been disgust. "Catherine had an affair with my husband, got pregnant. And when I found out, when I confronted her, she threatened to expose everything, to take my life, my company, my son. So I made her disappear." Ethan felt like the ground had opened beneath him. "You had your own sister committed, stole her child. I saved this family." Eleanor's voice rose. "Do you know what it would have done to the Voss name if people knew my husband had gotten my sister pregnant? If they knew I was raising my husband's child with my own sister? The scandal would have destroyed us. So yes, I took the baby. I gave her to Claire with enough money to ensure she'd never come back. And I made sure Catherine could never tell anyone the truth." "The fire," Shepard said. "Catherine set the fire." Eleanor's silence was confirmation enough. "She escaped the psychiatric facility I'd placed her in," Eleanor finally said. "Came to the estate demanding her daughter back. Your father tried to calm her down, tried to negotiate. She set the West Wing ablaze with him inside. Nearly killed you too, Ethan. And Lily. Real Lily. My daughter with your father." Isla's legs gave out completely. She crumpled, and Ethan caught her, lowering them both to the floor. "So I'm not Lily," Isla said, her voice hollow. "I'm the product of incest, of my mother sleeping with her sister's husband." "No!" Catherine called from inside the room, her voice stronger now. "No, baby, that's not how it was. Richard told me Eleanor didn't love him, that she'd been having affairs for years, that he wanted a divorce. He said he loved me. When I got pregnant, he promised we'd be a family." Eleanor laughed bitterly. "He told you what you wanted to hear. He was a liar and a cheat. But he was my liar. And when Catherine became inconvenient, he helped me have her committed. Then she murdered him for it." Ethan's mind reeled. Nothing was what he'd believed. Not his father, not his mother, not the fire, not Isla's identity. "Where's the real Lily?" he demanded. "Where's my actual sister?" Eleanor's face went blank, empty. "Lily died in the hospital 3 days after the fire. Her lungs were too damaged. I buried her in secret because I couldn't explain why Catherine's daughter survived and mine didn't. Couldn't explain that I'd saved the wrong child from the burning building." The words hung in the air like poison. Eleanor had saved Isla, Catherine's daughter, and let Lily die. Had chosen in that moment to preserve her sister's child instead of her own daughter's life. "Why?" Ethan's voice broke. "Why would you save her instead of Lily?" "Because I didn't know." Eleanor's composure shattered completely. The smoke was so thick. They were both unconscious. Both the same age, same size. I grabbed the one closest to me and ran. By the time I realized I'd saved the wrong girl, Lily was already gone. She looked at Isla with something that might have been guilt. I gave you Lily's scar so you could be her, so I wouldn't have to admit I'd let my own daughter die while saving my sister's bastard child. Isla stood on shaking legs, backing away from all of them. I'm not Lily. I'm not even Isla. I'm nothing. A replacement for a dead girl. A reminder of everyone's worst mistakes. Isla, don't! Ethan reached for her, but she jerked away. Don't touch me. Don't! Her eyes filled with tears. You've been looking at me like I'm your sister. Like I'm Lily. But I'm not. I'm the daughter of the woman who killed your father. I'm the reason you grew up without Lily. If Eleanor had saved her instead of me, you'd have your real sister. You'd have had her all these years. That's not your fault, Ethan said desperately. None of this is your fault. Isn't it? She laughed, broken. I took this job to feel connected to you, to insert myself into your life. And now you know the truth. I'm not your sister. I'm nothing to you. I have no right to be here. Before Ethan could respond, David appeared at the end of the hallway, his face grim. Sir, we have a problem. Claire Dawson just filed a lawsuit, claiming Isla is the rightful Lily Voss. She's demanding DNA proof and access to the Voss family trust fund. She's also filed a restraining order against you, claiming you're holding Isla against her will. Eleanor smiled coldly. I told Claire 20 years ago that if she ever needed money, all she had to do was prove the girl was Lily. DNA won't show the difference. Isla and Lily were both Richard's daughters. Same father, different mothers. Genetically, they're half-sisters, but to a simple paternity test, they're indistinguishable from each other. So Claire's been planning this all along, Shepard said, raising Isla to be Lily so she could claim the inheritance. Isla's face went absolutely white. She used me. Everything. The scar. The stories about Lily. Pushing me to take this job. It was all to set this up. And now she has legal grounds to take you away from here, David said quietly. The restraining order is effective immediately. If Ethan comes within 500 feet of you, he'll be arrested. Ethan felt his world collapsing. No. I just found her. I'm not losing her again. You don't have a choice, Eleanor said. The law is clear, and without proof that Isla isn't Lily, Claire can claim the entire Voss family fortune as Lily's guardian. Everything your father built, everything I've protected, it all goes to Catherine's daughter. 2 security guards appeared behind David. Sir, I'm sorry, one said, but we need to escort Ms. McLean from the premises. Ms. Dawson is waiting downstairs with her attorney. Isla looked at Ethan, tears streaming down her face. Maybe this is how it should be. Maybe I was never supposed to be in your life. Don't say that. Ethan grabbed her hand, the scarred one holding tight. Don't you dare say that! Mr. Voss, please, the guard said. Don't make this harder. They pulled Isla away, and Ethan's hand slipped from hers, the connection severing like a physical wound. She looked back once, her eyes full of despair, before disappearing down the hallway. Ethan stood frozen, his chest hollow. He'd found his sister, lost his sister, and found someone who might be more than a sister, all in the span of 48 hours. And now she was gone, claimed by a woman who'd spent 20 years preparing to steal everything he had. Eleanor touched his shoulder. Let her go, Ethan. She's not Lily. She never was. And holding on to her will destroy everything. He shrugged off his mother's hand, feeling something inside him harden into diamond-sharp determination. No, he said quietly. What will destroy everything is the truth, and I'm going to find it, all of it, even if it burns your precious legacy to ash. But as he said the words, he wondered if it was already too late. If Isla was already lost to him forever. What will Ethan discover that changes everything? And can he get Isla back before Claire's plan succeeds? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next part. Ethan sat in his penthouse office at 3 in the morning, surrounded by documents, DNA reports, and 20 years of lies, his mind racing through every possibility, every angle. David had left hours ago to get sleep, but sleep was impossible when Isla was somewhere in Claire's apartment being fed more manipulation, more lies. His phone buzzed for the 100th time, his mother calling again, and he sent it to voicemail again. Then a text came through from an unknown number. Look at the hospital records from the night after the fire. Real Lily had AB negative blood, extremely rare. Check what blood type they used for Isla's IV yesterday. Shepherd. Ethan's hands trembled as he pulled up the medical report Dr. Rivera had sent over. There, in black and white, blood type O positive, not AB negative. His heart stopped. If Isla had different blood than Lily, then Eleanor's story about accidentally saving the wrong child was impossible. You couldn't mistake one child for another if they had different blood types. The hospital would have flagged it immediately when treating them, which meant Eleanor had known exactly which child she was saving. Had chosen Catherine's daughter deliberately. But why? His phone rang again. This time it wasn't his mother. It was Isla. He answered before the first ring finished. Are you okay? Where are you? I swear if Claire hurt you. I'm fine. Her voice was quiet but steady. I'm locked in her apartment, but I'm fine. Ethan, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about everything Eleanor said, and it doesn't make sense. What doesn't? The scar. Claire told me she gave me Lily's scar when I was 5, right after the fire. But I remember getting this scar. I remember it clearly, and it wasn't when I was 5. Ethan sat up straighter. When was it? I was 7, maybe 8. I remember because it was winter, and we were living in that shelter in Queens, and Claire cut my hand with a piece of glass from a broken picture frame. She said it was an accident, but now I think she did it on purpose. To match a scar she'd seen in photos of Lily. The pieces started falling into place with devastating clarity. Isla, what if you're not Catherine's daughter at all? What if Claire stole you from somewhere else entirely and has been lying about everything? But Eleanor said... Eleanor's been lying for 20 years. Why would she suddenly start telling the truth now? Ethan was pacing, his mind working through the logic. The genetic test will show you're Richard's daughter because you are, but not Catherine's, someone else's. Whose? Isla's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Can you get out of there? Can you get to somewhere safe? Claire has the door locked from the outside. She says it's for my protection, that you might try to kidnap me. But Ethan, her voice dropped lower. I heard her on the phone earlier. She was talking to someone about the money, about how she just needs to keep me contained until the DNA results come back and the court awards her guardianship of Lily's estate. She said once she has the money, she'll disappear and I'll never see her again. She's going to abandon me. The pain in her voice shattered something in Ethan's chest. I'm coming to get you, right now. You can't. The restraining order. I don't care about the restraining order. I'm not leaving you there. Ethan, wait! Isla's voice strengthened. If you come here, she'll call the police and you'll be arrested. then neither of us can stop whatever she's planning. We need to be smarter than that. She was right, and he hated it. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Claire's been planning this for 20 years, but she made one mistake. She told me tonight that my real mother, whoever she is, signed away her parental rights when I was born. That Claire adopted me legally when I was 3 months old. She said it like it proved she was my real family. But Ethan, if there's an adoption record, there's a birth certificate, a real one, with my biological mother's name. Ethan was already typing, pulling up databases. What name did Claire use for the adoption? That's the thing. She didn't use Claire Dawson. She used her real name. The name she had before your mother gave her a new identity. Isla paused. Rebecca Chen. The world tilted. Chen, as in David's mother, Mrs. Chen, your head of household. The revelation hit like lightning. They're the same person. Claire is Rebecca Chen. She's been working in my house for how long? According to what she told me tonight, 15 years. She said your mother hired her back after I was old enough that you wouldn't recognize me, but young enough that she could keep an eye on me. Keep me close but hidden. Ethan's mind raced. David doesn't know. He can't know. He would have told me. Or he's part of it. No. Ethan's voice was firm. I've known David since we were kids. He's not. But doubt crept in. How convenient that David had been the one to suggest Isla for the maid position. How convenient that he'd been feeding Ethan information, steering the investigation. I need to check something. Stay on the line. Ethan pulled up the employee records for Mrs. Chen. Her start date was 15 years ago, just as Isla said. But her employment contract had a clause he'd never noticed before. A trust fund set up in her name, maturing when her son turned 30. David turned 30 in 3 months, and the trust was worth exactly $2 million. The same amount Eleanor claimed to have given Claire. She's been blackmailing my mother, Ethan said slowly, for 15 years, threatening to reveal the truth if Eleanor didn't pay. And she's been grooming you, Isla, giving you that scar, telling you stories about Lily, positioning you perfectly so that when the time was right, she could claim you were Lily and take everything. But I'm not Lily. The blood type proves it. Claire doesn't know we have that information. And even if she did, she can argue the hospital records were wrong. It's been 20 years. Files get lost, mistakes happen. Without Lily's actual body to test, it's your DNA against Eleanor's word. And your DNA will show you're Richard's daughter. So we need proof of who my real mother is. Proof that Claire stole me, or proof that Eleanor knows exactly who you are and has been hiding it. Ethan heard something in the background on Isla's end. Voices. Someone's coming, Isla whispered. I have to go. Ethan, promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter what we find out, no matter whose daughter I really am, you won't look at me differently. Because right now, talking to you, I feel like myself for the first time in my life. Like I'm not Lily or Isla or anyone's pawn. I'm just me, and I need you to see me. Just me. Ethan's throat tightened. I see you. I've seen you from the moment you woke up in my bed, terrified, and still tried to apologize for being there. You're the bravest person I've ever met, and whoever you are, whatever your name is, that's who I'm fighting for. I think I'm falling in love with you, she whispered. And I know that's impossible and complicated and probably wrong, but I needed you to know. In case something happens. Nothing's going to happen. I won't let it. The door on her end opened. Claire's voice, sharp. Who are you talking to? The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone. Isla's words echoing in his mind. I think I'm falling in love with you. He'd known it before she said it. Had felt it growing every moment they were together, every shared look, every touch. It didn't matter if she was his sister, or a stranger, or the daughter of his father's mistress. And what mattered was that she was Isla, and she was in danger, and he was going to save her. But first, he needed answers. He called Shepard. I need you to pull adoption records from 23 years ago. Mother's name, Rebecca Chen. Father, unknown. The child would be Isla's age. On it. What are you thinking? I'm thinking my mother has one more secret. The biggest one. And I'm going to make her tell me what it is. He hung up and dialed Eleanor. She answered immediately. Ethan, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Where are you? Home. Why? Stay there. I'm coming over. And Mother? You're going to tell me the truth about who Isla really is. All of it. Or I'm going to the press with everything I know about Catherine. The fire. And the fact that you've been covering up a murder for 20 years. Silence. Then quietly. You don't understand what you're asking. Then make me understand. You have 20 minutes. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, his phone buzzing with a text from Shepard. Found the adoption record. You need to see this. The birth mother's name is going to change everything. Who do you think Isla's real mother is? Drop your theories below. And if this story has you hooked, hit that subscribe button. The finale is going to blow your mind. Ethan stood in his mother's study, holding the adoption record Shepard had sent, the paper trembling in his hands. Eleanor sat behind her desk, her face carved from ice, but her eyes held something he'd never seen before. Fear. The birth mother listed on Isla's adoption certificate is you, Ethan said, his voice deadly quiet. Not Catherine. You. Eleanor Harmon. Which means Isla isn't my father's daughter at all. She's yours, from the affair you were having. Eleanor's mask cracked. You don't understand the circumstances. Then explain them, now, before I burn this entire house down to find the truth. His mother stood, moving to the window, her shoulders rigid. I was 28 when I met Thomas Brighton. Your father and I had been married 5 years, and he was already cheating with my sister. I was lonely, angry, and Thomas was kind. The affair lasted 6 months. When I got pregnant, I knew the child couldn't be Richard's. We hadn't been intimate in over a year. Thomas wanted to leave his wife, wanted us to run away together, but I couldn't abandon the Voss empire. So I hid the pregnancy, gave birth in secret, and gave the baby to Rebecca Chen, my assistant, to raise. You gave away your own daughter. I gave away the evidence of my greatest mistake. Eleanor turned, her composure shattering. If Richard had found out, he would have divorced me and taken everything. I'd have lost you, lost the company, lost my entire life. Rebecca agreed to adopt the baby and disappear in exchange for $2 million. But she didn't disappear. She took the money, invested it, and came back 15 years later with a new identity and a plan. To blackmail you. To bleed me dry. She threatened to tell the world, that I'd abandoned my daughter while raising you, that I'd chosen the Voss name over my own flesh and blood. So I paid her, month after month, year after year, I paid her to keep silent. Ethan's mind raced, but Isla is still Richard's heir if she's your daughter. The DNA will show she's related to me. As a half-sister, yes. Rebecca knows this. She's been planning this for years, grooming Isla to believe she's Lily, to make her claim to the Voss fortune legally airtight. Once the court declares her Lily Voss, Rebecca gets guardianship, access to the trust fund, and disappears with everything I've built. Not if I get to Isla first. Ethan pulled out his phone, but Eleanor grabbed his wrist. The restraining order, Ethan, if you go near her, is fake. David walked into the study, his face grim. I just got off the phone with the courthouse. No restraining order was ever filed. My mother forged the documents to keep Ethan away while she consolidated her plan. He looked at Ethan with anguish. I swear I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. When I found out what she'd done, his voice broke. I'm so sorry. She used me. Used my position to get close to you. To Isla. Ethan wanted to be angry, but he saw the betrayal in his friend's eyes and recognized it. They'd both been pawns in their mother's games. Where is Isla now? Still at the apartment, but my mother just left. I tracked her phone. She's heading to the airport with 3 suitcases and documentation claiming Isla died of an overdose tonight. She's going to fake Isla's death, take the insurance payout, and disappear before anyone discovers the truth. Terror shot through Ethan. She's going to kill her. She's going to make it look like suicide, David said. I found sedatives in her bag. Enough to. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Ethan was already running. The drive to Claire's apartment took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Ethan's mind churned with worst-case scenarios, each more horrifying than the last. When they arrived, he didn't wait for the building's security. He went through the fire escape, David and Shepard right behind him, Eleanor following at a distance. The apartment door was locked. Ethan kicked it open, the wood splintering. Isla! The apartment was dark except for a light in the bedroom. He found her on the bed, unconscious, an empty pill bottle on the nightstand. No, no, no. Ethan grabbed her, checking her pulse. Faint, but there. Call an ambulance. Now! David was already dialing. Shepard checked the pill bottle. These aren't fatal. They're sleeping pills. Mild dose. She's unconscious, but stable. Relief crashed through Ethan so powerfully his knees almost buckled. Then Isla's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Ethan? Her voice was slurred. You came. Always. I'll always come for you. He cupped her face. What happened? What did Claire give you? Said it was for anxiety. Made me take 4. Her eyes drifted closed again. Scared. Don't want to die. You're not dying. I've got you. He lifted her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. David, tell the paramedics to meet us downstairs. We're not waiting. He carried Isla down 3 flights of stairs, his arms burning but refusing to let go. The ambulance arrived as they reached the street, and the paramedics took over. But Ethan stayed close, holding her hand. Mr. Voss. One paramedic said, we need space to work. No. His voice was steel. I'm not leaving her. They loaded Isla into the ambulance, and Ethan climbed in beside her. As the doors closed, his phone rang. Shepard's voice was urgent. We've got Claire at the airport. Airport security detained her when she tried to board with a fake passport. She's claiming diplomatic immunity, but she's not going anywhere. The police want your statement. Later, after I know Isla's okay. At the hospital, they pumped Isla's stomach as a precaution and ran blood tests. The sedatives were already wearing off, and within an hour she was sitting up, pale but alert, in a hospital bed. Ethan sat beside her, still holding her hand. Your mother told me everything, he said quietly. Eleanor's your biological mother. You're not Richard's daughter. You're not my half-sister. Isla's eyes widened. What does that mean? It means you're Eleanor's daughter from an affair she had before I was born. We're not related by blood. At all. The implications hung between them, heavy with possibility. Isla's hand tightened on his. So when I said I was falling in love with you, it's not wrong. It's not impossible. It's just, Ethan's voice caught. It's the only thing in this entire mess that feels right. Isla pulled him closer, and he went willingly, wrapping his arms around her. She buried her face in his chest, and he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. I have a mother who gave me away, and a woman who drugged me and tried to steal my life. I have no idea who I really am. You're Isla, Ethan said fiercely. You're the woman who survived 23 years of lies and manipulation and came out kind. Who donated her paychecks to help people she didn't know. Who walked into a billionaire's house as a maid and saw him as a person, not a paycheck. That's who you are. And that's who I... He stopped, terrified and certain all at once. That's who I love. She pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. You love me? Completely. Probably from the moment I saw that scar and felt like I'd found something I'd been missing my entire life. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. I know this is fast and complicated, and there's still so much to sort out. But Isla, I want you in my life. Not as my sister, not as my employee, but as yours, she finished. I want to be yours. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious that might break. She kissed him back, her hand coming up to his jaw, and it felt like coming home after a lifetime of being lost. When they pulled apart, Eleanor stood in the doorway. I'll testify against Rebecca, she said quietly. Tell them everything. The blackmail, the plan, all of it. And Isla. She looked at her daughter with an expression that might have been regret. I'd like the chance to know you, if you'll let me. I can't undo giving you away, but maybe we can start over. Isla looked at Ethan, and he squeezed her hand. The choice was hers. I'll think about it, Isla said finally. But first, I need time. To figure out who I am without everyone telling me who I should be. Eleanor nodded and left. David appeared next, his face haggard. Rebecca's being charged with attempted murder, fraud, and blackmail. She's looking at 20 years minimum, and Isla... He paused. I'm sorry for everything my mother did, everything I unknowingly helped her do. You didn't know, Isla said gently. We were both pawns. After David left, Shepard stuck his head in. Case officially reopened. Catherine's getting a psychiatric evaluation for parole, and I'm recommending full investigation into Richard Voss's death. Justice might be 20 years late, but it's coming. When they were finally alone, Ethan climbed onto the hospital bed beside Isla, pulling her against him. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. What happens now? She asked. Now you heal. We both do, and then... Ethan pressed a kiss to her hair. Then we figure out our future. Together. I like the sound of that. Isla tilted her face up to his. Together. What did you think of that twist? Let me know in the comments below. 6 months later, Ethan stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the sunrise paint Manhattan in shades of gold and pink, his arms wrapped around the woman who'd changed everything. Isla leaned back against his chest, her left hand, the one with the scar that had started this entire journey, resting over his heart. You're thinking too loud, she murmured, tilting her head to look up at him. I can practically hear the gears turning. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. Just thinking about how different everything is now. How different I am. It was true. The cold, closed-off billionaire who'd woken up 6 months ago to find a collapsed maid in his bed barely existed anymore. In his place was a man who'd learned that control meant nothing without connection, that wealth was worthless without someone to share it with, and that the family you chose mattered more than the one you were born into. Good different, or bad different? Isla asked, though the teasing smile on her lips said she already knew the answer. The best different. Ethan turned her in his arms, cupping her face. You saved me, from becoming exactly like my mother, so obsessed with protecting an empire that I forgot to actually live. Isla had moved into the penthouse 3 months ago, not as an employee, or a secret half-sister, or any of the other twisted roles people had tried to force on her, but as his partner, his equal, the woman he loved more than his next breath. They'd taken it slow, despite the intensity of their connection, giving Isla time to heal from Claire's betrayal and the revelation about Eleanor, giving Ethan time to dismantle the toxic parts of his life and rebuild something better. I didn't save you, Isla said, her hands sliding up his chest to link behind his neck. We saved each other. She was right. In the months since that terrible night in the hospital, they'd both transformed. Isla had started therapy to process the trauma of learning her entire childhood had been a lie, and she'd enrolled in business school, not because she wanted to claim the Voss empire, but because she discovered she had a mind for strategy and a passion for helping struggling companies rebuild. Ethan had stepped back from the relentless 18-hour workdays and brought David in as co-CEO, finally trusting someone else to share the burden of running Voss Industries. Together, they'd restructured the company, creating a foundation dedicated to helping women and children escaping domestic violence, a tribute to the years Isla and Claire had spent in shelters, but one that would actually help people instead of perpetuating lies. Have you decided about today? Ethan asked gently. Today was the day Eleanor had requested to meet with Isla again, their first conversation since Isla had asked for space. Eleanor had been true to her word, testifying against Rebecca Chen and providing evidence that had sealed a 25-year prison sentence for attempted murder, fraud, blackmail, and a dozen other charges. She'd also quietly stepped down from her position on the Voss Industries board, claiming she wanted to retire, but Ethan knew it was penance. His mother was trying, in her own broken way, to make amends. I'll see her, Isla said. Not because I forgive her for giving me away. I'm not sure I'll ever fully forgive that. But because I've learned that people are complicated. She made terrible choices, but she also gave me life. That has to count for something. The growth in Isla's voice, the wisdom she'd earned through suffering, made Ethan fall in love with her all over again. You're incredible, you know that? She laughed. I'm a work in progress. We both are. David had been a constant support through everything. His own guilt over his mother's actions driving him to prove his loyalty 1,000 times over. He'd helped Ethan track down Thomas Brighton, Isla's biological father, a gentle architect living in Vermont, with a wife and 2 teenage sons. Thomas had been shocked to learn he had a daughter, but immediately welcomed Isla into his life, offering her a relationship with no strings attached, just genuine fatherly affection. Isla visited him once a month, building a connection with her half-brothers and the father who'd never known she existed. Catherine had been released from Whitmore Psychiatric Hospital after a full evaluation, determined she was no longer a danger to herself or others. The years of medication and isolation had left her fragile, but with proper treatment and therapy, she was slowly rebuilding her life in a supervised facility. Isla had visited her once, a deeply emotional meeting where Catherine had apologized for the fire, for the pain, for everything. Isla had listened with compassion, but maintained boundaries, another sign of how much she'd healed. I have something for you, Ethan said, reaching into his pocket. Isla's eyes widened. Ethan, if that's what I think it is. It's not a ring. Not yet. He pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate platinum bracelet with a single charm, a phoenix rising from flames. I know we agreed to take things slow, and I'm not pressuring you for more than you're ready to give. But I wanted you to have this, a reminder that you rose from the ashes of everything that tried to destroy you and became something beautiful. Tears filled Isla's eyes as Ethan fastened the bracelet around her wrist. It's perfect. You're perfect. Well, not perfect. You still work too much and you're terrible at remembering to eat lunch. Says the woman who gets so absorbed in her studies she forgets dinner exists. Ethan countered, grinning. We're a mess, Isla said fondly. A beautiful mess. They stood there, wrapped in each other, as the sun climbed higher, the city waking up below them. Two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage of lies and betrayal and built something true. Something worth fighting for. I love you, Ethan said, the words coming easier every time he spoke them. I love you too, Isla replied. My billionaire who found a maid in his bed and got a whole lot more than he bargained for. He laughed. Best discovery of my life. Later that afternoon, Ethan sat across from Eleanor in a quiet cafe, Isla beside him holding his hand. His mother looked older, the weight of her secrets finally visible in the lines around her eyes. But there was also something lighter about her. Peace, maybe, or the beginning of it. Thank you for seeing me, Eleanor said, looking at Isla. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, Isla admitted. But Ethan helped me understand that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about freeing yourself from the anger. Eleanor's eyes glistened. I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did, giving you away, hiding the truth, all of it, was unforgivable. But I want you to know that not a day has passed in 23 years that I haven't thought about you. Wondered who you became, if you were happy. I wasn't always happy, Isla said honestly. There were hard years, scary years, but there were also good moments. Claire, Rebecca, despite everything, she did raise me. She taught me to be strong, to work hard, to never give up. I'm not grateful for the lies, but I'm grateful for the survival skills. You turned out remarkable, Eleanor said softly. Far better than if I'd raised you. You have compassion I never learned, kindness I never prioritized. She paused. I'd like to be part of your life, if you'll allow it. Not as your mother, I know I lost that right, but as someone who cares about you, who wants to know you. Isla glanced at Ethan, who squeezed her hand supportively. The choice was hers, always hers. We can start slow, Isla said finally. Coffee once a month. See where it goes. Eleanor nodded, tears spilling over. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. As they left the cafe, Ethan pulled Isla close. You okay? Yeah. She smiled up at him. I really am. For the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am. Not Lily. Not the daughter of anyone's affair or anyone's pawn. Just Isla. And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Where's that? Right here, with you. Ethan kissed her, soft and sweet, a promise of all the tomorrows they'd build together. The past would always be complicated. The scars would always remain. But the future was theirs to write. And they were going to make it extraordinary. 3 months later, Ethan proposed on the same balcony where they'd watched the sunrise, with David and Thomas and even Eleanor there to celebrate. Isla said yes through happy tears, and when Ethan slipped the ring on her finger, right above the phoenix bracelet. She knew she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all her life. Not a family defined by blood or obligation, but one built on choice, trust, and unconditional love. The Voss Empire continued to thrive under new leadership, but its legacy was no longer just about wealth and power. It was about second chances, redemption, and the truth that sometimes the family you find is stronger than the one you're born into. And every morning, Ethan woke up next to the woman who'd collapsed in his bed 6 months ago and changed his entire world, grateful for the scar that had led him to her, grateful for the courage she'd shown in the face of impossible odds, and grateful that love, real, honest, transformative love, had found them both when they needed it most. They'd both been lost. Now they were found, and they were home. Thank you so much for watching this incredible journey with me. I hope Ethan and Isla's story touched your heart the way it touched mine while bringing it to you. What did you think of all those twists? Did you guess the truth about Isla's identity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who loves a good romance with mystery and suspense. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another story. I've got so many more emotional, twist-filled tales coming your way. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments. I love seeing our global community. Thank you for being here, for supporting this channel, and for letting me share these stories with you. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most broken beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.